Social Pulse Weekly, brought to you by Agorapulse. Discussing this week's hottest topics and latest developments in social media marketing. With your host, Jennifer Watson. Here's Social Pulse Weekly.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday, and thank you so much for joining us for this extra special episode of Social Pulse Weekly. I am so pumped and I am so excited because one of my really good friends, who is also a big part of the NFL, is joining us today, and we're going to totally geek out on their social strategy and how they create really unique experiences and incorporate that into social, into marketing, and also how the hell do you run social media and create these unique experiences for the Super Bowl for millions of people? So I'm so excited she's here, but I'm also very excited that you are here watching us. So if you're joining us, let us know who you are, where you're watching us from, and if you're a football fan, let us know, and let us know who your favorite team is as well. You may not know this, though. If you are an avid watcher of Social Pulse Weekly, you should know that I grew up in Rochester, New York, and I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, hardcore Buffalo Bills fan, and we made it almost to the Super Bowl. I was so pumped and excited that we maybe actually did it, but unfortunately we didn't, and that's okay. So I think we might make it next year. I hope so. Maybe Katherine can give me a little insight. But we've got Frank in the house. Frank, I'm so glad you're joining us. We got Jen Cole. We've got Scott Ayers. Go Cowboys. Frank is in North Carolina. He's in the beautiful mountains. So I'm a little bit jealous actually of where they are right now. They've seen snow. They've seen everything. We've got Juan Santiago in the house as well. Thank you all so much for joining us. And I want to bring on our amazing guest because she is just so fun. She's so awesome. And you know what? I'm going to stay on screen while I read her bio. Usually I pull them full screen, but we're just going to geek out about you, Katherine, for a hot second, okay? So everybody knows how awesome you really are. So Katherine Chan-Smith is the strategic architect of the NFL Media's award-winning social integration department, which is, wow, that's a tongue twister. She leads a team whose focus includes merging social content with live stream and linear programs, innovating interactive storytelling experiences and applications, programming social content for the NFL Media Group's show handles, supporting the NFL Talent Social Media Initiative, and cloud-based graphics development and strategy. As a founding member of the NFL Network, she has an extensive cross-platform background in multimedia sports production and storytelling. Prior to joining the NFL, Katherine worked in Bristol, Connecticut with ESPN, contributing to SportsCenter and their NFL programming. Katherine lives in her hometown of LA, Los Angeles, California, with her husband, and is a proud mom of two very active kids, Maddie and Ryan. So Katherine, I just have to say, I'm a huge sports geek, and football and hockey, those are my two loves. I also love gymnastics. That's different. But first, can you just give us a little bit more background of just your love of sports and how you just got into where you are today?
Jennifer, thanks so much for having me. I can't even believe you got through my bio. I should have been, I should have streamlined it somehow so that we could just actually get to the fun stuff.
No, that's good. And you know what? Frank just said, this is what Frank said. He says, I bow to you, Katherine. Yeah, he said, too much awesomeness. This is very true. We have a fun crowd, Katherine, that joins us on Fridays. We're just chill. We're pumped for the weekend. So yeah, we're so excited you're here. But yes, tell us more.
Thank you, Frank, for the love. I appreciate it so much. So it calms the nerves a little bit too. But yeah, a little bit about my background. I just have been a sports fan most of my life. I played sports. I grew up watching sports. It was easy to have a fandom for sports when you grew up in LA with the Lakers and the Dodgers and the Kings, and everything was at our disposal. We were fortunate to have sports teams to root for, and I didn't really envision having a career in sports. Initially, I thought that it was just a hobby and something that I enjoyed. But once I finished college, I thought that I would rather than taking a gap year in college, I thought before I would maybe go to law school, I would take a gap year or two and just do something fun. And so I had applied for a job with ESPN. And fortunately for me, given me, with very little experience outside of some internships in college with sports departments, I'd gotten a job as a production assistant with ESPN in Connecticut. I remember the day that I got the notification and the offer. I was driving to meet my parents for lunch and I got lost. And I got lost in my hometown, like literally driving to the same restaurant that I'd gone to 20, 30 different times. And I was just so excited that I would get an opportunity to work in sports. And I thought I would only be in Bristol for a few years, but I just fell in love with it. And so, I mean, for anyone who's a sports fan and who wants to do something fun and not be stuck at a desk job, 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 every day, I highly encourage you to pursue sports broadcasting or sports television or multimedia, because it really is a lot of fun, especially if you're into sports.
Oh my gosh, I love that, Katherine. And because I love that you have a media background, and from working at local TV stations and doing the weather, like it's fast paced. Like it's one of those things where and I think you would attest to this, Katherine, where every day you start from scratch, right? You start all over again. Whereas most companies have these long-term goals, and we have, like in media, you have long-term goals, but it's like every day is a new story, right? Every day is like a blank page. So
absolutely. And I mean, you and I have both, again, I interned with in our local markets, and, they're some of the hardest working people because they have to be. They're so devoted to what they're doing. They're trying to make sure that they're keeping their local communities current and up to date with all the information that they need. And every platform services a different demographic of people, and definitely for local news there's such a niche for it, and it's so important, especially for the communities. So it is, and there's very finite deadlines, as you know. And it's not an easy job, but it's definitely an exciting one that keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, and I love how you said it too, like the 5 o'clock show or the game starts at this time. Like it doesn't, you can't push it back. It's not a meeting. Like it's a runaway train. So you're on the train or you're not on the train. And that's basically it. And I love Stephen G. Harris, who's joining us, both contact sports. Nice. Yes. Gosh, I love action. I actually did lacrosse in college. So I love Stephen. Stephen is loving this. He said his major in college was radio and TV before social media. I love that. And, just like we're talking about, social media is so fast paced too. Like if you don't like change and having to be on top of things, then like social media and like journalism and all that isn't the right thing for you. But like Stephen, I think we all agree with you. Like we love the fast paced, and I love that your major was radio and TV. I bet you're fantastic on live video and social media and all that. And Katherine, I would love to know, so what is your like highest degree in? Did you get a master's degree, and what is it in? And then how long have you been in kind of the marketing social media industry?
I don't have a master's degree. Like Stephen, I wasn't a television major actually in college. I went to UCLA, and I was a political science major. I thought that I was going to go to law school. But again, in my spare time, I loved sports and I loved being involved with it. So all of my internships, well, not all, but most of them were with local sports departments, or even I interned in DC for 2 summers in college, and that was such a fantastic experience that I had. So I was always close to sports, but I didn't actually study broadcast journalism. I learned, I think with broadcast, I think it's great to have theory classes in college, but I think I learned the most just the practical, the hands-on, getting an internship. I learned so much at ESPN. They have a great entry-level program. With television production is specifically where the way that I started my career, and then I pivoted towards social media. You learn a lot just by actually doing the work and applying things that you learn in the field. You could read about it in books and you could read about it in case studies, but there's nothing like actually getting your hands dirty. And so if anyone's looking to get into sports broadcasting, I would say get an internship, hop in and just get your hands dirty as quickly as you can, because that's how you're going to learn. You're going to learn from people who've been in the business. That's what I love doing now is a lot of people that are starting their careers. I love seeing their ambition and their enthusiasm, because I was like them before, even though the landscape has changed so much. So, and then with social media, it wasn't really an intentional move. I've told a few people this story before, where I was producing shows, long form stories, short form, a lot of the NFL media's creative content. And my executive producer at the time just said, look, we really have to figure out a way to merge social content, because it's become a huge player and a voice and platforms, and we need to figure out how we can integrate that into our shows, and maybe even draw in a different demographic that is a little younger than what we currently were drawing. And so I was pushed in that direction, and I've loved it. I've had to learn a lot about social media, but like with sports broadcasting, there's never really a dull moment.
This is true. This is so true. And I'm so intrigued to hear about, the team you manage and what exactly you guys do, because that integration is kind of very strategic into, everything that you do. We've got Brian Afanzo in the house. He says, love everything Katherine has been doing. Truly an inspiration. That's so sweet. And I have to ask you, Katherine, how many social profiles does the NFL have and you actually produce or other teams produce content for?
So I want to say, gosh, I have never really taken stock. Let's see. We're on every social platform, from Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, Facebook, like every platform. We have a TikTok, we have a presence, and there's different teams that manage different ones. My team, we specifically program for because we're tied to the network. We program the at NFL Game Day handle, the at Total Access handle. So handles that are tied specifically to the show. And then there's different groups that manage TikTok and Snapchat, and the main NFL Twitter, and the official NFL Twitter, the official NFL Network Twitter and Instagram. So there's a few different groups. Everyone is that I've come across in our teams, across all the different platforms, are so talented. It's really exciting to see. My team, we focus more on inbounding versus outbounding. Like inbounding meaning we curate a lot of the content. So we are the ones that are pulling in all of the best content and bringing it into the shows, and merging it with our programs. If there's breaking news, we oftentimes will pull in not just the breaking news tweet, but the responses and the reaction to what's going on, and allowing not just verified users, but even fans to voice their opinion and their point of view, which is really neat, because, we oftentimes talk about how do we bring our audience closer to us, and how do we bring them into our world and our space. And social media has allowed us to do that. We don't need necessarily these broadcast cameras or satellite trucks, which used to be a thing, but now it's like with social media, we can pull in their tweets, we can pull in their videos, we can pull in their live streams. It's been a game changer.
And I love that. And you know what is interesting, Katherine, as talking about the NFL Network, because I worked at the Weather Channel, and so we did a lot of the same thing, right? We had to integrate social with our live audience to try and bridge that gap and create like a truly unique experience, an interactive experience, because TV and shows, they're not a live show, but you can make it almost seem like, you're integrating and you're talking to people. So I absolutely love that. And Katherine, one thing I didn't tell you before the broadcast is when the Super Bowl was in Atlanta 2 years ago, I was a part of the host social media team with the host social channels.
I remember that. Yeah.
And that was such a wild ride, because we had a list of over 800, 900 questions that people could possibly ask, and like folders, and we were all in rows. Like everyone was trying to answer every possible social media question there was, or a question about the Super Bowl. And it's like, you could not catch up, but it was like one of those amazing experiences. I'm like, I'm trying, guys, we're doing it. But it was like hundreds of thousands of tweets, which was so amazing. So yeah. And Katherine, we just need to get together after this. We just really need to. And we've got great questions here. So first one, is the NFL on Clubhouse yet?
I don't really handle that space, but I haven't heard that we're on Clubhouse. I do know that, Twitter also has a new well, it's an emerging platform that they're starting to test out, that Spaces, that is similar to Clubhouse. So and we work closely with Twitter. I don't think that we're on Clubhouse yet. At least I haven't heard anything internally, but I do know, and having had some conversations with Twitter, that it would be interesting to tap into Twitter Spaces.
I'm excited for that, Katherine.
Yeah.
What makes it so difficult with brands on Clubhouse is it has to be tied to a specific phone number to get an invite and get on. And so I've seen other brands kind of struggle with that. How do we do that? It's more of a personal experience. But I'm excited for, like, I can see you guys partnering with Twitter to launch like Spaces and do things. So Katherine, you'll have to keep us posted or send links to different things that you're doing so we can keep an eye on all that. I love that. And this is a great question from Stephen. Which social platform is the most popular for the NFL?
Definitely, I think for the NFL, it's Twitter. I mean, we are, Twitter is where most of our, if not all, but our media resides, and that's where it's real time. That's where you're getting the most information. It's just the most accessible. Though, I mean, Instagram is also a huge platform for us. But again, depending on the demographic, depending on what you're looking for, there's something for everyone. I mean, I love Reddit. Our NFL Reddit team is incredible. Patrick Crawley and Shannon Lane, like they have done such a great job growing that space. And I could say the same of even, our digital media group that handles the Twitter and the Instagram, and TikTok and Snapchat. It's just, what are you looking for? What are your interests? That's a platform for you. But for the most part, in terms of my team, and even looking at the social landscape for the NFL, I see a lot of the bulk of the conversation is in Twitter because of the real-time aspect of it.
That makes complete sense, Katherine, because it was the same thing with weather, right? It was real time. We would not post a tornado warning on Facebook, and someone sees it 2 days later and they're like, "What's happening?" So that makes complete sense. And by the way, the fans that are on here right now, they want you on Clubhouse bad.
Oh.
I'm just going to say this, but it's okay. We'll figure it out. Tristan said Twitter Spaces would be great, but how can we possibly introduce you to Clubhouse too? Tristan, we'll work on that. We'll figure that out. And Stephen said, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, which NFL team has the largest fan base on the social channels or has the biggest following? It's a great question. And
that is a really good question. They're all pretty active. I would have to say that typically, from what I know, like there's certain fan bases, like the Raider fan, like anytime we post anything Raiders, obviously like Patriots and Cowboys have huge fan bases. Bills, your Bills are super fanatic. We have a great time when we post content with the Raiders. They have a really, really passionate fan base. I think those are ones that stick out. But oftentimes a team that is doing well, you'll see there's an uptick in engagement and content for that matter. It's hard when your team is having maybe a little down year, that it's hard to really pump out a lot of content that gets a lot of people going. So it helps when their team is performing well and having some success. But honestly, if you're going to ask me ride or die, I would say Bills, I would say Raiders, or Cowboys, definitely ride or die. Yes, Eric, definitely Bills.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. You know what? I'm kind of surprised about the Raiders a little bit. I guess I don't know the fans of the Raiders that well, but I'm kind of impressed by that. I think that's awesome. And Brian brought this up. It kind of cuts us off a little bit, said, love following some of the NFL employees on TikTok and Instagram as they give behind the scenes access to the day in the life. How much freedom do you have to highlight the NFL life? Ooh, that's a great question. How much freedom do you have, Katherine?
We have a lot of freedom. There's, obviously everything. My team doesn't really program for the NFL handles, and we know the people that program for TikTok. So I don't have the specifics necessarily, and I don't want to misspeak about anything or misrepresent. But in my space and my experience being with the league, like we do have a lot of freedom. Like we try to depict exactly what it's like to be in the NFL or what's going on in the NFL, like just facts in an entertaining way, So I don't think that there's necessarily like really, really specific guardrails. But obviously with any brand, there are guardrails to work within. But for the most part, we are trying to be as factual and honest and authentic as we can.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And that's such a great answer, because it can be really difficult sometimes, and it's up to like the individual how much they do want to share, which was something that, at the Weather Channel, it was up to each individual meteorologist. You can do what you want, it just kind of depends. I love Eric, because Eric with the puns, what a touchdown conversation. Eric, you're amazing. Let's see how many football puns we can create. I want to know that. And so many, like Clubhouse is so big. So many of us have fallen in love with it. So yeah, so we'll see what the future. I'm interested what Twitter Spaces, what you guys have to do. We've got the Bills Mafia by Marissa Callie. I'm so excited you're here. She says, hi, Katherine. Do you often partner or collaborate with sports media brands on fan-run shows? That's a great question.
That is a good question. Hi, Marissa. No, not often. We haven't yet. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't consider it, but we haven't in the past. I mean, oftentimes we'll have, especially for our live streams for either social or digital platforms, we treat it very much like, I don't want to say that we treat it like a network show necessarily, because it's very different, but there's some connective approaches that are similar to a network show, where we have, a very prescriptive rundown and guests and content that we have planned. It really depends on what the topic is, but we haven't. But again, Marissa, we would be open to it. It really just depends. That's a bad answer.
No, it's not a bad answer. That's a great answer. I love that. No, it's difficult when it comes to partnerships and collaborations, because there's a lot that has to go into it. So I love that. And to the pun question, way to kick this off. Stephen's going to town with this. Nice tackling the questions. Good job. I love that. We've got Deb Mitchell, who's our community manager. She said, what advice do you have for a college student who wants to work for the NFL? And I think you kind of, you mentioned earlier about ESPN. They have a great initial program for first-time employees, I guess. But if there's any other advice you have maybe for someone that wants to do that, that'd be great.
Definitely. I mean, ESPN, a lot of networks, a lot of major networks, and even local television entities have wonderful internship opportunities. I think that the more that you can get your hands dirty, again, I think that you can go to a great master's program, but for me, my experience is nothing beats just getting your hands dirty and actually jumping into the workforce in the field that you're looking for, specific to, television or social media platforms. Because believe it or not, coming out of college now, these college grads know so much more than I did when I was coming out of college. And so they have such a unique point of view. Oftentimes, that's the demographic that we're trying to reach anyway. My son's playing the trumpet right now.
Oh my God, I know the song he's playing. I think he's playing Mary Had a Little Lamb. I practiced that. I played the clarinet. I really wanted to play saxophone, and I wasn't allowed to because too many people were, so I played the clarinet. So I love it. It's real life. We talked beforehand when I had my daughter with me, and she would be on my hip screaming or like on my lap while I was interviewing. So I love it. I so love it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did you have anything else to add, Katherine? We have more questions. You guys are awesome.
No, just really like getting into internships and getting your hands dirty. I think it's the best way to learn, and you'll be exposed to a lot of different people, and, you'll find a mentor. I think that's, but school is good too. If you want to get a master's, that's a great path as well.
I love that. Yeah. Internships, anything you can do. Jen said that her son plays the trumpet too. I love that. That's so awesome. Steven said he played did you play an instrument? I want to know this now. Let everyone share the cornet. I'm not sure what the cornet is. This is the same thing as a clarinet. That may be a silly question. I just don't know. But we've got a great question from Frank. And Frank said, what is your advice for putting together a crisis management plan? And so this is something, Katherine, when COVID started impacting us in the US. It was like the beginning to mid-March, everyone's like, oh crap, every day was different, right? Everyone's like, another shutdown. This is happening. This is happening. And we realized like we had a crisis plan, but we had crisis meetings, and we realized we need to ramp up our like crisis planning so we weren't as defensive and we were more proactive. But with a pandemic, it's kind of hard. But what kind of a crisis management plan? And I'm sure I'm so like, I love that we were able to do the Super Bowl on the same day it was like originally scheduled if there wasn't a pandemic, and you guys did such a good job. But what kind of crisis plan do you have in place, or advice for someone or a brand that's trying to put together a crisis plan either for themselves or for a client?
That's a great question. I mean, especially in, after the year that we've spent in quarantine. I'm fortunate that I work for a legacy brand like the NFL, who has leadership that takes care of a lot of that and guides us in the right direction. The things that I've learned from it really is that it's always okay to take a moment, take a pause. Oftentimes when we're experiencing, not just with the pandemic, but if there's wildfires or natural disasters or certain things that are happening nationally, that we try to be as sensitive as we can to the people that are impacted, and it may not be us directly, but we need to be respectful to the fact that this is affecting a lot of people, and people that we might be related to or have a connection to. So oftentimes the edict that comes down is, hey, let's be respectful, let's kind of pause for now, let's not post anything from a social perspective. And then for the network side, when we're in our broadcast, oftentimes we make sure that we're providing the most current information, and also just educating as well as we can with the information that we have, and trying to fill in the color of how it's affecting people. So with the forward facing, that's what you would see from the NFL. With us internally, just so proud of the NFL in general. Like, again, we have leadership and management here that has really guided us and had been looking out for our well-being, even with the pandemic. As you had mentioned, we worked from home. I have not been back in the office since March, and we have been able, and I would say credit to our leadership and all of our teams and my team that I manage. People at home, I don't think would notice that we've been producing content from our living rooms and our garages and home offices. Everyone's had to lean in and really, we got like microphone and like equipment failures and troubleshooting. So many of our talent, they're not just on camera, but they've had to be their own makeup artists. They have to be their own audio techs, and everything. They're setting up cameras, setting up lighting. One of my favorite talent at the network, his name is Andrew Hawkins. He's a great follow. He's a former football player. He has what we call a toe prompter, because he uses his toe to prompt for himself. He is like a Swiss Army knife. It can do everything. Not only played football, but he's so brilliant and he's so resourceful. And so everyone's just had to really, get with the program and figure out how we can still do what we do, but in a safe environment.
Yeah. And I love that. I think every kind of company brand has tried to figure out, okay, what like makes sense. And it's kind of just a learning process. But now I think like everyone is going to have like the most epic plan in place. And I think when it comes to creating a plan, Frank, to just finish off, is just think about, for whatever clients that you have as an agency, what is the worst possible case scenario for them? Somebody, saying something bad about their brand, a product that, fails somehow or isn't right. Just figure that out. And how would you approach that? Figure that out now before something like that happens. Katherine, people love you. We have so many questions for you. And Mike Alton, just like you said, taking a pause is so important and needed. It's always okay to say nothing if you're not sure what to say. That's the safest thing, is just, if you're not sure, just wait until you can talk to someone or talk it through or meet with the team. That's so important. All right, we got Steven has a question. Do you focus more on the teams or specific players and their personalities? Some players are made for social. This is very true. Katherine, how would you answer that question?
Stephen, we focus on everyone. There's so many great stories in the NFL, and from players to staff to clubs. If there's a good story, we want to tell it. And oftentimes, we'll work with different clubs, even especially when I was doing features, which was, previous to social media, but when I was doing more of the actual long form or short form storytelling. If there's a good story, human interest, or maybe it's some sort of advocacy, it's like it needs to be told, then we should tell it. And especially if it's with the people that are involved in the NFL, because there's so many wonderful people, so many incredible stories. One of the things that we do at the Combine every year now is we curate just thousands of social content of the draftees, and we put them into this touchscreen content mosaic. And so it looks like this very curated feed of each prospect, and we ask them about all of their posts, because we might have seen it on their feed, but we really don't know the impetus behind it. And we're able to then surface it and ask them about it. And there's always a story behind the story too. So I really love merging, or having had the opportunity to merge, and research social content, and kind of, it's almost like social profiling, where you're like, oh, he's into horses, or this person loves fishing. Tell me more about fishing. Like, who have you fished with? And someone's into, we found out last year that Chase Young plays 3 instruments, because we were talking about instruments earlier, but he plays the piano, he plays, I want to say maybe the trumpet and the saxophone. But these are just interesting nuggets. It may not be a full-fledged story, but it's so interesting to know that these big, strong football players who are so gifted at their craft, but they also have other interests that might be similar to yours and mine. And so it humanizes them. And I just love learning more about the players that make up our league.
I love that. I bet like every single story, like one of the reasons why I love watching sporting events is like what the NFL Network does, like behind the scenes, and tell the story of like how that football player got there, or what, they had to overcome. I'm like, oh my God, I can do anything, because if he can do it, I can do it. Like, I mean, I just love that. And I love a Cinderella story too. I have to give a quick shout out. We've got Trisha in the house. She's amazing. She joins us every week. So Trisha, thank you so much for being here. She says, hi, Jen and Katherine. She loves the Agora Pulse family. We love you, and we're so glad you're joining us. Deb Mitchell had a really great question, and she said, how do you juggle and prioritize information and events all happening at the same time from multiple different sources and teams? And this is a great question, because you've got multiple games, the same day, or different events, or like so much going on. How is it all organized in like an understandable way? And, how do you decide what goes on the network, or what takes priority over something else?
That's a good question. We just make it happen. We use, we have different Slack channels where we, there's for internal communication, and we obviously use like TweetDeck, which keeps us with the most current topics. And so with Slack, we oftentimes just share like, did you see this? Did you see that? And then, we'll plug it all in, and it's this continuous thread of the most notable content. And oftentimes you'll see a thread happening too, even, in Slack, or even within conversations for planning. And so oftentimes it's, if you're watching the games and there is a lot to follow, but thank goodness for Red Zone, we're able to really follow along with just the trending stories and the topics, injuries, notable, maybe top plays even. So that's how we basically try to just funnel everything into filter everything to a specific Slack channel. One of the examples that I would use from this past year is when Dak Prescott had been injured, and we just suddenly see like our TweetDeck just explode, and there was so much content from players and just fans just commenting on how tragic it was, and you could just tell how beloved he was. And so when we see this swell of content, it reminds us like there's a story here, and we really need to make sure that we tell it in the right way, because we see a lot of players suffer injuries, unfortunately. It's part of the game, and This particular one obviously is someone that's so beloved and so respected in the league that you see a different response to it. And then on, the happier side of things, when it's not injury related, there was the Hail Murray, that when Kyler Murray had thrown that Hail Mary, and we saw just a surge of responses to that too. So, like fans of, the Cardinals or not, or just football fans in general, everybody's talking about it. So that's something that we should focus on. Oftentimes we're just guided by what's happening in social. We're not necessarily sitting around saying, this is what we need to talk about. We look at social content and look at it as very directional, telling us we should focus on this, maybe focus on these other things that are not necessarily trending, but do have a big response. So that's how we prioritize.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much hard work, and especially on the weekends. And one thing, you guys, Katherine, the Super Bowl was less than 2 weeks ago. Katherine was luckily able to take some time off work and take a break. They got some time off work, though she still had to do some different things. And Katherine, we have so many awesome questions, guys. I'm loving this. And there's a question from Trisha, which ties into kind of a question I have for you, Katherine, as well. She says, how do you manage expectations of content and delivery, and i.e. managing, maintaining consistency and quality? Which is a great question. And it kind of ties into wanting to learn more about what you do. Like, what does a typical day for Katherine look like? So maybe kind of marrying those two together, if they even are marryable.
Sure. I'm in a lot of meetings, a lot of planning meetings, and I usually try to stay out of my team's way. I have a really diverse and talented team, and they are so good at what they do. They're young and they are very opinionated, and they have this really keen eye for good content. So oftentimes I'm there to just remove obstacles from their way so that they can be they can have success with what they're doing. And to your point with how do we maintain consistency and quality is really, I think that we set this really sometimes unachievable or like crazy bar for success for ourselves. And I try to remind my team, do your best, try your best. And sometimes it's not going to go viral. It's not going to explode, and it's not going to be the best content. But the best thing that we could do is just to go with it and learn from it. You're not going to, every piece of content that you put out, or every piece of content that or idea that we pitched for in-show integration is not going to work out the way that we want it to work out for various reasons. We have a great idea, but maybe the execution fell flat. And then we learn from it. So just give yourself a break and give yourself some grace is usually what I tell my team. If there's a good idea, let's collaborate, let's workshop it and move forward with the best possible plan. But expectation wise, like there's some things we can't control, how it's received and how, like, what if we put out a great concept, but it was competing up against something else that happened or broke? You can't really control all the other variables that might affect the performance of what you're doing. So, I know it sounds kind of strange to say that we do have a bar, and there is a level of expectation for excellence for what we do, but we also know that there's some things that we can't control. So we try to control what we can and accept the things that we just really can't.
I love that, Katherine. And that kind of goes for like everything in life. That is such good advice. And really quick to what you had talked about before, Steven said, which platform is best to follow that social of Combined? He liked that a lot. So what social platform is like the best? Probably Twitter, but maybe it's different. Maybe it's something else.
Twitter, Instagram. Sadly, we're not having the Combine this year. It's going to look a lot different just because of, COVID. So we're not going to be in Indianapolis, and there are more pro days for players this year. So we're not going to have those content mosaics, but great follow. Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, those are great evaluators. Lance Zerline, they are top-notch evaluators, and you're going to get your most insightful combine and draft information from in terms of Art Network. They do a phenomenal job. I mean, Daniel Jeremiah, which his handles Move the Sticks, he really is just at the top of his game. He has great like 80s and 90s hip hop references when he's posting, like very relatable but very insightful information. And he watches a lot of tape. Same with Bucky and Lance. I need to get those guys on Clubhouse. I'm actually trying to get them with Twitter Spaces. So keep an eye out for that. But they are in the next few months. Those are very important people to follow, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you so much. And we've got Marissa Callie. She's got a question. Do you have an engagement strategy with retired players? So that's a very good question. I love that, Marissa.
It really is, Marissa. It's a great question. We actually have a Legends team that is run out of New York, and they do a great job. There's a whole group of them, and we're able to tap into that Legends community because they've stayed very close to the NFL too. So there is, and again, the NFL is so big and so broad but there's different people that manage different groups, and there's a group that does that. We do work with them. That's how we, with Hall of Fame, with Super Bowl, with any of our tent poles, we oftentimes will pull in someone from the Legends or a few people from the Legends community, because it's just as important to learn about the history of the game so that you can appreciate the present. So all of it, we tap into all of that. There's nothing that we leave off the table, really.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love the history too. I'm a history buff as well. So I love hearing the stories and the fascination behind it all. And so, Katherine, I can't believe we're going on like 45 minutes because this is an amazing conversation. I feel like everyone wants to keep you here forever. And I know we can't, but I have a question. What social platform has your team or the team that covers the social struggled with engagement the most? What social platform do you guys are like, okay, it's like this content just isn't doing as what we would expect, if there is even one? Because I know there's always so much engagement and excitement around football. But is there one specific one you struggle with just a little bit?
So since we don't program as much, my team, our Twitter platforms that we manage it's only Twitter and Instagram. So we don't even have, for the shows at least, and for our flagship show, NFL Total Access, or any of our game day properties, we don't have a social presence on other platforms because we fall under sort of the bigger umbrella of the NFL or NFL Network. They're on every platform. So I couldn't really speak intelligently to which one performs. Maybe we struggle to perform with primarily because I would say that, depending on the type of content, we will strategically program it to those platforms, knowing because we do a lot of research, we've done, even citing a few years ago with the Combine, did a lot of A/B testing where it's like we post content to 2 different platforms and see and do a little research to see, where the demographic of viewership or where there's an appetite for that content. So there's a lot of planning and strategy that's involved. But I would say personally, what I see, even with inbounding content, the toughest one is probably Facebook, primarily because of the privacy firewalls that come with it. Yeah. So as much as we'd like to engage in that space, it due to the way that it's engineered, it's more difficult. But again, there's a demographic there that has an appetite for a certain type of content, a little more long form. There's also some live opportunities too. So we still program to those spaces, but it's just a different strategy.
Yeah. And I love that, Katherine. We did a poll in our Facebook group a couple weeks back about Facebook, and basically someone put in there necessary evil, which because you're playing the game with them, the algorithm game and stuff. And so I feel like, because I was going to answer for us as well for Gore Pulse, it is Facebook. It's the necessary evil, and it's one that we kind of struggle with as well. So, yeah. And thank you so much for that answer. And Marissa said, we'll get all of Katherine's information before we leave. There's so many great questions, but before I get to any more, I want to ask you, Katherine, for someone that's in your position or any kind of anyone in media, social media management, what is the most important skill set someone needs to have to succeed?
That's a really good question. I feel like we can go in a number of different directions. I would say in my space, communication's always vital. It's really important to have good communication skills. I would say just passion. I mean, passion and paired with an equal dose of a work ethic. I think that we're in such a competitive space. You know, someone can come out of college and a year later they are a social media expert. And what does that really mean? I mean, it shifts and changes. I don't even consider myself an expert. I think that I'm a student of multimedia. I'm a student of social media. It changes so much, and you really have to continue to adapt and shift with it. And so, you know, you really have to be curious too. I think that there's so much to be learned from. I'm learning from people that are half my age that have been in in the workforce a fraction of the time that I've been in. And it's exciting. It's exciting to be in the trenches with people who have a different point of view that I can learn from and that I can also help grow in other areas. And so it's very collaborative in that way. And maybe collaboration is the key. I don't think that we're in a world or in a space now that we can do things on our own. You know, it's not something where one person is going to be able to do something that and maybe I'm overlooking it, but I do think oftentimes some of the best things that we've done and that the best things that we've put out have been a true collaboration between groups, either in the ideation phase, all the way through to the execution. It takes a lot of people to move all the moving parts.
I love that, Katherine. And I love that you said, like, it's a team effort, right? So, like, everyone has a role, and you're not going to get that touchdown. I get to do a whole bunch of puns right now. You're not going to get that touchdown if everyone doesn't come together and work together. You know, you got to have that plan. So, and I love how you said that, because you got to have passion as well. If you don't have passion for whatever you're doing, even as your day job, which it should be something you love, then you're going to find it so hard to have success and be happy and so many other things. So I absolutely love that, Katherine. And I have like a couple more quick questions. So now that the Super Bowl is done, it's just like, it's amazing. It's awesome. What is your strategy to keep everyone excited about football while you've got basketball and other sports, you know, hockey going on? How do you keep the conversation going during those kind of not dull moments, but off-season moments, I guess you could say?
So we're really fortunate, a really funny backstory, but when I first started with the NFL, and we weren't a media group at the time, it was really just the NFL Network back in 2003. And we actually took, I think it was a week or two off in the off season where we literally had a moment to recharge and we recycled shows, we repackaged shows and aired like best ofs for 2 weeks. And I remember my executive producer at the time saying, "Don't get comfortable with this. We're never going to have this again." And he was right. I mean, for us, there is no off season. We're in the midst of, you know, getting ready for, if in non-COVID times, we would have been getting ready. I probably would be leaving for the combine in Indianapolis in the next few days. And so there's still pro days. There's still this evaluation process as we're ramping up to the draft. So as we finish off February, we would have combine. Then in March, we have free agency, and it's already been a really exciting free agency season, as you could see with, I mean, Carson Wentz just went to the Colts. Like there's a lot, and JJ Watt is still out there. Like there's just so many different moving parts that we're still following and tracking that are really exciting. And then there's the schedule will come out for next season sometime between March and April. And then in April, there's the draft. And so every month there are stories and news and information to be shared and to be told, stories that we're tracking. And then, you know, as soon as the draft is over and rosters are starting to take shape, we have OTAs, we have training camp, and then before you know it, we have the Hall of Fame in August and preseason, and then we're back at the season again. So there really isn't an off season for us anymore. I mean, there is an off season where there's no games, but there's still a lot to follow with the NFL, which makes it really exciting.
I love that. And there's always something to talk about. And one of my favorite days out of the entire year is August 1st, because I'm like, it's almost here. I get so excited. I'm like, we've got this, guys. It's fall. Like, I love everything about fall. We've got football. You got pumpkin spice, everything, the changing colors. Like, it's such a fun time. So I love that so much. And Katherine, are there any brands that inspire you? Because you do so much, and the content that you create in the inbound, that you integrate into everything else is so amazing. But are there any outdoor lifestyle clothing brands that you're just like, wow, they do this really well, and I get inspiration from that?
There are so many, so many. And I love this question because it changes all the time too. But some of my favorites that are like that always I love to tap into, like Humans of New York. And some of these are not, like you said, it's like they're not sports brands, but I love Vice. I love who doesn't love Wendy's? I mean, if you need some snark in your day.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes, absolutely.
These are mostly like brands that I think have left some sort of memorable mark, like in my mind. Just even thinking about COVID in the last year, something more current. It was like that Cowboy and Western Museum where Seth was the media manager, but the security guard was running their social media account because the museum was shut down. I think his name is Tim Tiller, maybe, but
yes.
Hashtag the cowboy, like long live the cowboy. I love that. I just love stories like that where maybe they had a moment, and that's usually what it is anyway, right? They have a moment and then it fleets, but they're still just so memorable. Recently I've been really enjoying content from Gold Thread. It's like an English language platform that focuses on like food and tourism from China, just tapping into my roots. I've never lived in Asia, but I'm so curious about the food and having a bit of wanderlust because we've been stuck at home.
Yeah.
Speaking of wanderlust, like Nat Geo, I just think, Nat Geo and Airbnb, they basically use user-generated photos that just look pristine and beautiful, and it gets the job done. It makes you want to travel. I think it helps that we've all been stuck at home, and so it makes you want to have a change of pace and scenery. But Nat Geo has done some great things. I love Reese Witherspoon. I think her and Jennifer Garner, like I smile all the time. Just their content is so uplifting.
Yeah, I agree. I love them both, actually. They're both fantastic. And I love that you brought up the cowboy, because my boss, Mike Alton, who was in here, I don't know if he's watching. I don't think he is, because he would have commented, because he's like, this is awesome. This is so amazing. And so just being clever and fun and being human, I think is like the biggest thing. And so I love all that so much, Katherine. And if you're I think the great advice for anyone out there who's struggling to be creative or clever, stop trying to create content and start absorbing it and, looking out for it and just seeing what's out there, what other brands are doing, seeing what you like, what you think is clever, what you don't like. And, you'll get your creativity back. There's so many cool ways. And one of the biggest things that I think you also brought up, Katherine, was user-generated content, or UGC. It was easy for us, the Weather Channel. It's probably pretty easy at the NFL, because I would even tweet my daughter. I'm like, hopefully the Buffalo Bills will retweet it. I'm like tagging it and everything using the hashtags. I'm like, hopefully they will. But trying to create ways to get that user-generated content, just like you said with Airbnb, because whether it's like shirts, products, whatever, having a contest, because that also helps humanize your brand. Instead of having models or whatever else, it adds personality and just a human touch. So many great tips. Katherine, I love you. There's 5 minutes to the top of the hour. And so it is trivia time, and it is NFL trivia time, guys. And I am pumped. I'm so excited. And Jackie said, great session. Thank you so much. Legally Blonde alias. I love Legally Blonde. I'm just going to say it right now. But so it's trivia time. Now you can win an Agora Pulse shirt or a mug. This is where we create user-generated content, because when we send it out, people will take photos and we share them on social. So, but you have to get both of these questions correct to be in the running for either an Agora Pulse shirt or mug, your choice. And we're not going to give the answers away right now, just so whoever watches it after the fact, they have a chance. But keep in mind, Katherine and I can see into where you are. We can see your computers. So if you Google it, try and find the answer, we're going to see you and we're going to catch you. So just keep that in mind. So I'm bringing the first question up. When was the NFL, the National Football League, founded? Is it an A, 1890, B, 1910, C, 1920, or D, 1930? Keep in mind when you answer these questions, do 1-A, B, C, or D. So I know you're answering question number 1. Do not Google this, guys. We see all of you right now. So yeah, NFL trivia. This is fun NFL trivia. So, and NFL's been around a long time, and I tend to give away these questions or these answers. So I'm going to try and steer away. But what year was the NFL founded? Was it 1890, 1910, 1920, 1930? So just take a guess. I see that there's someone on Facebook. Yeah, just go for a guess. We've got 2 people that are guessing C. Keep in mind, guys, we see you. I see your computers. But yes, those are good answers. We got B. B is a great answer too. They're all great answers because football's been around for so long. So we'll keep it on for 10 more seconds. And I'm not going to let Katherine say anything because she'll just give it away. We'll both give it away.
I was going to say that I have a good hint, but I don't really want to give it away.
Oh, let's do the hint. Do the hint, Katherine. I have to hear the hint now.
Well, we just celebrated a very big anniversary last year.
Oh, this is true. This is true. This may be an easy question. Darn it. All right, guys, we're moving on. Question number 2. Let us know what you think about that. So this is an interesting one that I thought was clever. So NFL players weren't required to wear helmets until when? When were NFL players required to wear helmets? Was it in 1928, 1943, 1957, or 1961? Remember, when you answer this question, answer it 2-A, B, C, or D. So I know that you're answering the second question. So yeah, when were the NFL players required to wear helmets? In 1928, 1943, 1957, or 1961. Don't Google it, guys. We see you. I see you. We see into you. You have to be answering this question within like 30 seconds of me asking it. Otherwise, we know you're up to something. I know you might be thinking too. We got Justin Hornbeck in the house that said B. It's a good guess, Justin. Justin, are you a football fan, and who's your football team? Yes, I love this. Brad Friedman said C, or that was for the first question. Stephen, you say B. I believe this is for the second question. And Stephen, I'm so glad you joined us, by the way. Huge sports fan, just like all of us. I love that. Juan Santiago said B. You guys are doing good. With that said, I know we've got a minute to the top of the hour, and I know, Katherine, your time is so valuable. So I just have to say, Katherine, thank you so much for joining us and just geeking out with everyone and answering all the questions that everyone had, because, it was just like the best hour of my week and hopefully everyone else's week. So where can people find you and follow you and geek out with you personally on social?
Well, I'm not a great follow, unfortunately. I'm a voyeur. I love perusing all the things that people are posting, but you could find me at Kat Chan Smith on Twitter or Instagram. You're going to get a lot of mom content, unfortunately, but but if you want to, follow at NFL, because we program some awesome content there. If you love something a little more snarky, not snarky, but fun and light, the Check Down is a great handle that we have. There's a little bit of everything for everyone. So definitely, give our NFL brand some love. My team, we program for NFL Game Day on Twitter, and at NFL Total Access on Twitter and Instagram. So I would love it if you guys gave those some love.
Awesome. We definitely will. You ask and we will do it. And Justin Hornbeck said, really cool. Lots of information from Katherine. Yes, so much information. So Katherine, thank you so much. And really quick, guys, next week is an exciting week because it's our free Social Pulse Summit. This is our Instagram edition. We do a free summit every quarter because our goal is to not only give you an amazing social media management tool, but also educate you no matter what tool you use. We just want to help you, provide you the skills and everything, the knowledge you need to succeed. So this is all on Instagram, and this is 30 plus sessions plus live keynotes. And we get so granular on how to utilize and maximize the potential of all the different features of Instagram. It's not even funny. And so the best part about this is if you can't watch it next Wednesday on February 24th, all the sessions will be available for 30 days after the fact, because it's not like you can watch all those sessions in one day anyway, right? You're going to get burnt out. So they're all going to be available after the fact. So the best thing you can do right now, if you haven't done so already, go to summit.agorapulse.com and just register. Whether you can make it on Wednesday or not, that's okay, but at least gives you access to the sessions for 30 days after the fact. With that said, if you haven't done so, and if you're not watching this in our community, you should join Social Pulse Community. It's our free Facebook group. You don't have to use our tool to be a part of it. We geek out about the latest social media news and, geek out about strategies. You can ask questions in there, all those fun things. So search Social Pulse Community Facebook group and join that if you haven't already. And big thank you to everyone who joined us, because we had Tristan across the pond in the UK, so many people, Trisha as well in the UK. So it's Friday evening for them. And they, took time out of their evening. Everyone out there took time out of their work to watch us. So thank you so much for being a part of this. Katherine, thank you. Big shout out to you. And we hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you at the summit next week. Bye, guys.